So I think we're afraid of other people's healing because often it brings up a lot of the unresolved stuff within us. And just one prior point back to kind of the developing world. I mean, that's why shamans exist all over the world. These are the people that, whether through plant medicine like ayahuasca, peyote, various ceremonies, rituals of initiation, where the entire community witnesses your development and your growth and nurtures you to kind of find your role, kind of service to everybody else. I think we're nurtured away from this sort of isolation or this neurosis, which essentially plays upon all of these qualities that I think need to be healed, but society at large, especially in the West, um, is the source of it, and yet doesn't know how to heal it. When I get the sense that that's kind of the problem, is that it's a much bigger picture than just this guy's issue or this woman's issue. I think we all are tangling with it. It's just certain people are had experiences that didn't expose them to it, or luck of the draw in a lot of ways.
I want to take a part of the first part and the last part and kind of connect them. Do you think that depression is, as you mentioned, it's kind of an epidemic in today's society? Do you think it's a very Western problem and a very brought upon the culture that we have in a modern problem? Do you think when you're talking about the ancient and the shamans and the ritual healing of some of these tribes that you talked about in the past, do you think they were riddled with these type of mental illnesses to the degree that we see today, whether uh, they were necessarily identifiable back then, or that they just didn't have time to almost deal with that? Like it's a hashtag first world problems. Like we have all of our things figured out, so now we can have time to be depressed and have some of these other mental, illnesses that go on with that.
It is definitely a byproduct of the intellect, I think. Because quite honestly, I mean, I've spent a great deal of time with people with I don't know what we're calling it, mentally handicapped, or I think developmentally disabled. That's what the new kind of thing is. Some of the happiest people I've ever met in this world. Pleasure to work with them. Pleasure to be around them. Small gestures were huge. I mean, I think it comes down to gratitude in a lot of ways. And when I was in places around the world where either there was a survival trip as a whole, so buying someone a soda that they could never afford was like a magical gesture. But time, I think also just sharing time with someone is also something worthy of gratitude. And I have to say, I come back from a journey somewhere, and I'm like, ooh, I can drink from the tap and warm showers and, the most amazing pizzas and cheeses and breads and I'm so overwhelmed with the gratitude of having returned. And then there's this kind of dialogue of entitlement that's kind of like, okay, well, this is how it's supposed to be, and that gratitude begins to diminish. And I think that there's a direct correlation between gratitude and happiness. And in the first world, we lack gratitude overall. It's how I feel.
I think you're right. I think gratitude is a key factor when we talk about the process of healing in general, and a way to rid entitlement, a way to rid a lot of things in our life. I do believe it is the secret sauce. It is the fabric through line to our tapestry of life, so to speak, and it has the ability to kind of bring it back to the first part, help you surrender and help you start to surrender to something greater, which allows a healing process to be able to begin. And once you're able to have that gratitude, you can start to understand that you're a small part of something larger, and you're giving thanks for that. And through that, healing can really take place. But I guess when we're talking about healing and we're talking about gratitude, I'm wondering if this beginning part of the process of accepting gratitude in your life and accepting the healing process, is this something that is a lifelong journey? Or when we're talking about physical wound, wounds heal after a certain amount of time. Is this process of healing to you something that continues on from the time you start to understand that I need to heal to the time we die? Or is it you move on in segments? I heal this part of my life, then maybe I attack another part of my life. But overall, is it still a whole journey? Is it a whole process? Or do we ever summit the mountain? Do we ever get to a peak where we no longer kind of need healing?
Look at atrophy, for example, kind of the inevitable heat death of all of existence. I mean, you get to a certain age, and health-wise, we're all breaking down, and pay now, pay later sort of thing. So I think health determines a lot of people's mental perspective. I think someone's physiological issues will definitely can play hell on them mentally. So on that note, I'm sorry to be a bit of a pessimist on that level, but I mean, just having worked in people in their 90s, I mean, it's really the mind-body connection, where their level of optimism and their ability to envision themselves getting better. I think it's, once someone's laying in a hospital bed, being told, that they're a fall risk and can never walk on their own and lose a lot of their independence, that's kind of where the whole journey begins to spiral down. So not to be, nebulous on that note, but in terms of internal healing, I mean, I don't think there's any sort of real arrival in terms of anything but a set, like the feeling of connectedness with all of existence. And I think that can be sustained every day through practice, through meditation, through reflection and awareness. Ultimately just being self-reflexive and living with integrity in a lot of ways. So I mean, I don't think you need to get too bogged down with it. And I noticed that a lot of people as they get older, just self-assurance grows, and I think self-assurance plays a huge role because very often it's the lack of self-worth that really plays upon people's journey of healing. I mean, whether they're worthy of being healed, whether they're worthy of being happy, and whether they're worthy of something better, or that sense of connectedness even. So, there's kind of two sides to that coin. There's the physiological coin, and then there's that kind of inner journey that happens just by growing older as well. So I think it's two-sided, but some people do need help along the way. In fact, maybe we all do.
That's a good point, because what I would love to comment on would be this idea of attaining self-worth, attaining self-love, and if this is part of our healing process, and we eventually get to a point where we do feel this sense of self-love and we do feel this confidence in our own worth, I wonder, is this the point where we can now heal others? Do we then in turn become the healer? So along our journey of interconnectedness with people, or along the way as we're broken, are we able to heal people and kind of have this journey together? So maybe my original question of reaching the peak was more of not that we're done the process of healing, but now we're in turn become the healer, and we're able to start enlightening other people. It's not necessarily you've reached the peak and you're done your journey. You're just on to the next spot, which is kind of giving back to others. I'm wondering what your thought on that, something like that, would be.
Oh yeah, I mean, as a somewhat kind of self titled healer, I mean, it required me to kind of go into the swamp and the mire of the soul. And about 19, I had what the Navajo referred to as the dark night of the soul, where I really kind of looked at all of my stuff for a really long period of time. I'd go for 4 days of fasting, and I'm not suggesting that this is for everybody, but this is what I did. Sat on beaches in Hawaii for 4 days, not eating and just meditating, and really kind of examining my journey. And I think the place you get to with most of it is kind of like that whole the process of grieving, that the final stage is acceptance. And I think you begin to love those parts of yourself that were hurt, and then maybe try to find enough empowerment to empower other people through that. Again, being a healer, I do it. I say it in the sense of medical massage and helping people walk again or get out of surgeries or use their hands again, because to me that's something that kind of exists within. Because I help people kind of witness, and I use the word miracle as something as an unexpected result, but I've definitely seen miraculous healing, but it definitely had to do with the fact that the person, we had an interpersonal connection, they felt safe and really open to find that place of healing. I think healers work in all sorts of ways. I think teachers can be healers. There's the medical component of it. There's the psychological component. Ecological healers. People saving animals, and I mean, I think overall our progress as a species is becoming a more empathetic civilization overall. And listen, watch the news. There's tons of points that would be contrarian, or sorry, contradictory to this becoming a more empathetic civilization. But between gay marriage in America and all these sort of things, I do see us becoming a more empathetic civilization. So I think that there's going to open up the forum for more healers and more healing, and allowing people the forum to experience compassion. I don't want to say publicly, but I want it to be, compared to the 1950s, where maybe someone's dad could explain how to fix a toaster, but not tell you exactly why he's sad. I think as men even, we're allowed now to express our hurt. Maybe not always, not within every group, but I think overall, the empathy that the West is experiencing in forms of books and coaching and just a culture of healing is allowed. I mean, whether it's California, whether it's India, whether it's all these other these influences, but I do think it's a better time to be alive on Earth and to mend a lot of our stuff.
Going back to your 4-day journey that you kind of took and went through this process of healing on your own, I'm curious, is there somebody that stood out to you that helped bring you to that level? Was there a teacher that took you on that journey, that indeed was the healer and you were the student at that point in time, and now going through that you have become a teacher through the massage healing and things like that?
Yeah, I was really fortunate at the young age of 15 rather, to work in a bagel place down the road from me, and one of my coworkers was a gentleman from Puebla, but by way of like the Mojave Desert, whose grandfather was a Nagual or a shaman, and he taught me a lot about just things like a sense of integrity, but also being able to see a lot of subtle energy that is interacted with other people in subtle ways that we all, kind of our magic in a lot of ways that he revealed to me. I mean, I was fortunate to be surrounded by these visionary both men and women, in my travels, who all were either different Native Americans or Mexican or European or African healers, and coming from different walks of life, especially New York, to be quite honest with you, is a great deal here as well. But I would say that it kind of came from within, only because I've been meditating since I've been 2 years old. I've done the same meditation. It's a mindfulness meditation, I guess, is if I'm to put some words on it. I was doing it once. I was meditating in a sweat lodge in Northern California, and a guy was like, "Hey, where did you learn that 10,000-year-old Kundalini yoga meditation?" Or however old it was, because he had been traveling around India for 2 years, and I was like, "I don't know. I've always done it since I was 2." So that, for me, that meditation guided me to want to just kind of stick with it and see what happens when you remove all this distraction and allow this kind of internal fire to build up, and just watching the images passively. And by having done it for an extended period of time, I was able to look really deep